And just like that, we are live. So welcome Rogue 420 fans. And more importantly, this is Cannabis Culture. And this is CJ. And today I have Laura Madison with me from Cannabis Oklahoma Magazine. And we have a special guest today who's just fired up and ready to go. So Laura, if you want to do the honors of introducing Amy to our audience, that would be super.
Well, this is Amy Davis, but we'll let her introduce herself because she likes to do that, and she'll love it. Go ahead.
Nice. Yes, I have Oklahoma Canna Connect in Oklahoma. It's a company that's been connecting cannabis professionals since the beginning of 788, the end of medical marijuana prohibition. So that's really exciting.
She's brilliant.
Hey, I've been called worse. I worked really early stages on with some really incredible companies, ultimately helping to build an incredible company called USCP. It's the largest processor in the state. We were the only processors that utilize nano water emulsion technology as one of our forms of processing. So we have really unique products in almost 600 dispensaries across the state.
That's
so
awesome.
We made a real huge impact on the Oklahoma market with about 150 products. So from start to finish, it's an incredible company.
Exciting.
Yeah, very exciting. So congratulations on your success. And I think that's a great place to start from. So why don't you go ahead and explain maybe how you got started in this industry, talk a little bit around, not only how you got started in this industry, and more importantly, maybe share some of the ups and downs and some of the struggles, some of the victories in terms of your business and what you've done.
My gosh, yeah. I'm gonna have to go straight to my diary for this one, Carlos.
I love it.
Truth be told, it's an powerful and empowering movement based around education and access. For years and years, so many people have medicated because they needed to, not necessarily only because they wanted to, but everybody indifferently had to do what needed to be done. And now we've opened up the access portal so that all walks of patients and non-patients and everybody in between can at least learn and educate on the power of this beautiful newly released medicine.
Yes.
So I've been a great facilitator of education, one-on-one presenting data and experience and testimonies and access to so many across the state. Being affiliated with the largest processor and the most products gives really great access. And as a nurse, not currently, but previously, an educated nurse professional, I know how important it is to have the pharma medicine, to have the pharma education, to know that there's options to opiates, to steroids, to extreme medicinal intervention. And so, just to get that access and education and to be able to present it to others is really empowering and powerful. So I started in the industry right after it became legal, went immediately to the streets, talking to every single license owner that I could come across, gathering data and building relationships on how to make them be more successful, how to let the farmer gain those resources that maybe he's too busy farming to find on his own accord, and to be an advocate for all those local guys who really put everything in to do something spectacular. We've got so many craftsmen across the state that really need advocacy. And I've been at the right place at the right time with the right people doing the right things. And a lot of times that just means connecting them with somebody else, not for my own personal gain, but for theirs. And then months later, as they're gaining substantially, they turn for help, and I'm there because they know that I can help.
Yep, beautifully said.
It's just a beautiful connective environment right now. We have dispensaries all over showcasing their art and their ability to educate and give access. And then we have processors really working artistically to formulate some of the most unique medicines that Oklahomans have ever seen, because we're trapped in a bubble. We haven't had this access. We haven't had this exposure. We've been criminals for years. And
Created hope.
It has. Hope and awareness and education. Really, education is what it's all about, because nobody knows until we tell them, because it hasn't been here. We're in the middle of a divine movement but we really can. We can empower the people with education more so here than I have ever been exposed to the opportunity to do before. So with cannabis being accessible now as an educator and connector, we've seen some really wonderful things. Like Miss Laura coming here and introducing me to you, Carlos. Have you ever been to Oklahoma?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have. So I've traveled through it, and I've seen the countryside. I've seen the no countryside, and I understand you're in a very big market. Before we jump into that, I wanted to ask you a question more specific, because I think you said some things that are just very important. Why don't you talk to me a little bit around, for those people who haven't either experienced medical cannabis, who are on the fence, maybe consider trying it, what typically is like the first conversation that you have with them? And obviously we're not giving medical advice, but just in terms of giving them suggestions. So if I'm a new cannabis user patient, what typically is like, do you recommend? What are your recommendations to get started utilizing medical cannabis?
Sure. Well, first, it's to educate yourself so that you have at least a little bit of idea when you walk into a dispensary what your ultimate goal, your outcome is, because not every dispensary level clinician or bud tender or patient consultant, they might not be equipped to steer you in the right direction. So I don't want anybody to first off be falsely led down a trail that doesn't really help them. You'll have to really purchase or utilize a cannabis journal, because everybody is different. Cannabis is going to affect everybody different. Right. So the first conversation I have after that is basically on tolerance. Are you a new user, first time user, all day user? What are we using this for? Because just like opiates, if you break your arm, that Percocet is not going to get you high. It's going to take away your pain. Whereas if you have no broken arm, you take that Percocet and you're high. So again, why are we using this cannabis? Let's figure out realistically what can we do for it. Obviously not giving advice, but you really do have to look at some key elements within yourself, study how it affects you, and always go low and slow to start. I know that sounds cheesy, but until you know how you can handle it, you have to kind of gauge it slowly, and it could be from 20 minutes to 2 hours before you have effect. So isolate medicines. Just like if you're trying to find a food you're allergic to, only eat that one food for a while and see how that does. Because when you get tired of waiting on the gummy to kick in and you smoke 10 joints, you don't really know exactly what's helping you or if that's the right medicine. And it's not all about THC. That's the next thing I talk about really seriously. I try to educate mostly on the insignificance of THC focus. I think that if they appreciate it as an elemental composition of the blend of cannabinoids, then they can appreciate it at a 13-14%. And so I talk then about how cannabis works as a part of the puzzle, not the centerpiece of the table.
Yeah, I love everything that you just said, and it all resonated.
More, Carlos, he loves it.
You can keep going. But no, I think you nailed it. I think in part that, from what I've been told in terms of, someone's first use or experience with medical cannabis, that if the first use that they have and nothing happens and they don't feel anything, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Because the last thing that you want is someone's first experience being a bad experience, and then they're turned off from it or they turned away from it. I'm not sure what your thoughts are on that.
Well, and it could go either way. A lot of times, if you've never used cannabis at all, your cannabinoid receptors are dried up. They're not as receptive as they need to be. So you have to awaken them. And so sometimes people don't have any effect whatsoever the first time or two, or maybe the second time they have too much of an effect. Their body is in this freak out mode where they overstimulate. And then you'll have that hyperemesis, this freak out paranoia situation that's not comfortable for anybody. And that could last 4 hours. So, not trying to scare anybody, but really, again, back to low and slow. If you're a first time user, this is not something you can just do overnight. You have to introduce yourself, because your receptors, because of our society, because of prohibition, you haven't had access, you haven't had stimulation.
Right.
But every single mammal alive in this planet has cannabinoid receptors. Without access, what do? They just kind of sit there and shrivel up. So you have to give them a chance to, prepare a little bit.
Yeah.
So, titrate up.
Yep. Laura, hey, Laura, I'm hogging all the time, so I'll give you a minute too, because I'm sure you have some thoughts on what she said.
I mean, I just agree with everything she said, and she said it way more suave than I could ever say. So
whatever.
No, but I firmly believe, it's being able to educate and create awareness to all the different methods so that you can combine what works for your specific need, or target what's going to be the best or the most beneficial for your health. So I mean, there's a lot of things, raw cannabis, juicing cannabis, that's such a good thing to incorporate with different herbal remedies for different special treatments. Holistic healing is a good thing also, and all kinds of electronic frequency treatments. So there are a lot of methods. We just have to be the pathways or the lights to lead to all those different directions so that people have a choice.
Yep.
And I love that she mentioned that, because we talk about cannabis like it's the cure-all for everything.
The Holy Grail. The Holy Grail.
Benefits. You still need to remember nutrition is a drug. Nutrition is so important. I do believe in hyperbaric chamber benefits. I do somewhat believe in acupuncture and sometimes chiropractic, but it's really a holistic approach that requires rest, proper nutrition, cannabis, psilocybin,
your natural abilities to heal yourself that you're born with through natural immunity.
Yes.
You can do that, and we tear them down every day by taking things that are foreign to our bodies that aren't supposed to be there.
Right.
Yeah, I tell you what, I listened to a great podcast this past week, and it was called The Great Cannabis Debate, and it was on JRE, Joe Rogan Experience, and he had a author who had wrote a book that was very against cannabis altogether, and then the counterpart to that argument was a cannabis doctor, 20 plus years, primarily overseas, that just tons of experience with it. And it was a great discussion. I mean, it was really just a kick-ass discussion that really countered, really went into great depth in terms of, the cannabis, the usage. And one thing that really resonated was the fact that sometimes in our industry, we get, so excited about cannabis as a whole that, the uses of what it does, that sometimes we don't slow down enough to explain to people exactly what you're talking about as far as the usage and looking at the whole body perspective as to what is your diet, what is your exercise, what's your intake, and those things are just so vital to everyone. And I know for a fact that I'm very THC sensitive. It makes me go loco, so I have to be real careful with THC versus CBD and the usage I have for it. So I'm just mindful of that because I think it's so important. And the work
awareness and self-awareness,
and yeah, and I think that in part, as far as a professional industry, that we owe it to the patients out there that, like what you've talked about, that you have met with several people, dispensary owners and and bud tenders and all that they get some training, some knowledge, because it's just so that important, such importance, because we're talking about the health impact of individuals.
Agreed, 100%. Bud tenders, patient consultants, they're frontline support to provide that that direction. All of a sudden, they become doctors overnight. I don't know if they're prepared for it or not, and it really is a responsibility of the vendor, the farmer, the processor to give that knowledge, because they need it for the patients. The patients need that access. We know that Oklahoma is a growing new market, so a lot of focus is put on creating and sustaining this brand new model instead of education. So the patients are suffering, but we could at any time do some education shows, Mr. Carlos, if you want to roll it out.
Hey, I'm more than happy to. Anytime that you want to discuss education, I'm all about that. I love to feature individuals who are going above and beyond and researching and sharing the knowledge that, in this, I think in part we have to. And one of my next questions that I was going to ask you, Amy, was that if there's anything that keeps you awake at night regarding this industry, can you share potentially what those are and maybe what you see the future of direction of this industry
I'm
going?
not telling my secrets like that, Carlos. No, that's a trick question. Nope, not telling. No, I think for a good answer to that question, I would probably say realistically, I think the biggest problem for the patients is the increased cost of medicine. The end use to obtain a med card is just now finally giving them a break at $75, $100, which can be really tough for a lot of families. And then the medicine at the end of the day not even be educated to them or served properly, yet they're paying top dollar. And so that really does bother me a lot. I really hate it when patients need medicine and they don't have access because of a card restriction due to finances, or because of finances they can't afford the medicine itself, or they're recommended something that's not right for them and they waste their money. That really does bother me.
Yeah,
that bothers me bad.
I completely agree. The social equality and the social aspect regarding access to this, I think that's huge, and that's something that keeps me awake at night because I am in this industry. I'm not sure if Laura has shared with you. So for our listeners, full disclosure, I am in this. Not yet, Laura. No, just kidding. So anyway, so what keeps me awake at night?
Cheers.
So what keeps?
She's gonna write it in her diary, and I'm gonna read it later.
What keeps me awake a little bit at night is that we see some fairly significant big players in this space and their ability to influence the national conversation. And why that kind of scares me a little bit is the power to influence at the federal level. And as much as we have many advocates that are sitting there cheerleading for the complete unscheduling of cannabis, and then also the decriminalizing, which I completely support. The thing that I don't want to happen is that allows at one point for the FDA or some other governing body to step in and stipulate which players in this space are deemed medical property companies. And, because as much as we want federal, to get out of the way, I think that in part, that federal program is staying out of the way and not what I'm getting at. There's some groups out there that are asking for federal guidelines, and I'd rather not have those federal guidelines. I'd rather each state specifically decide the future for their state and what the people believe. As advocates, we just got to be real careful with that federal guideline and what we're asking for.
Okay, so I'm 100% with you on a lot of those points. I like the individuality of the states' discretions and indiscretions. Right. I think that's cool, which is kind of allowing us to be states in general. We all do that anyway in general. But we do need some type of regulation to separate and differentiate the recreational from the medical market desperately, because the medical patients are in desperate need of very safe medicine. There are 7-year-old boys too fragile for RSO from a dispensary. They can't eat gummies. They require, their life depends on pure, clean, not bullshit anything. They need the real sterile deal. And that's not happening all of the time. We don't have experienced laboratories to test or to tell us definitely on this child's life that I can trust this material. And so we need the experience of the states that have been doing it for 11 years. It's a cry for help from those labs to tell us what this medicine is like. And I shouldn't have to fear sending my medicine across the border to get 11 years of experience to test my medicine. They should be able to come here and test my medicine, or vice versa, in certain elemental ways that still protect the state. Don't get me wrong. But I think that for the federal decriminalization, allowing the safe access to the extreme medical patient could be differentiated from a raw recreational market that serves as is or slightly deviated from this plan, but close, to provide exotic medications that are great for topical aches that don't require a med card. Not everybody who has arthritis needs a damn med card to get THC, CBD. You should be able to get it from your grocery store.
Yeah, that and again,
Safely.
I think it's a real delicate balance. I really do, because I think that when we're at that stage where we decide to, to call it medicine, and here goes back to my fear, is that fine balance is this: when we decide to call it medicine is when the FDA gets involved, and the FDA says, in order to submit for medical applications, here's the applications it needs.
Yeah, but they allow poison to be medicine. They will deem that's a totally different conversation, Carlos. Big Pharma allows arsenic in pills. They call these things medicine.
Well, no, I
Opiates,
completely.
Suboxone, they call it medicine. Give me a break.
No, we're
I don't believe in that.
we're on the same page in terms of,
I'm sure.
Yeah, we're on the same page, but that's my.
I said I was fired up.
It's got her sparked up.
I'm just.
It is a fine line, Carlos.
I know.
And I don't know what I can do.
I know I'm getting your fire.
If I can educate and provide access, then I've won a little bit.
That's why I love this podcast, Laura, because we can have these engaging conversations versus, because I get it, and and part of the concept with having a cannabis culture podcast is so that we can talk about these things, not just that everything is so great and life isn't, because there are considerations that we as an industry need to start thinking of in advance and staying ahead of these people that are looking at these things. And I guarantee it. Like, for example, let's talk a little bit around the fact that CBD is in a medicine right now. And so my biggest fear is the FDA, as it approaches cannabidiol, that they say that, hey, you know what, since CBD is in a medicine, anything over 50 milligrams of CBD is going to be considered medical properties only. So all you people out there that are producing these products, you can no longer do it. And and people that say, well, that can't be done, that's not going to be done. And I'm like, well, yes, it can. Look at, for example, like the states of New York that banned adding flavors into anything related to vapes.
Yep.
So these things can be done, and we got to be aware. We can't fall asleep at the wheel in terms of advocacy and these things that are occurring in our industry, because in any space, whether it's the police or it's educators, even medical professionals, there's good and bad actors in any profession. And we just always want to be mindful of that as we grow and expand as an industry.
Your energy. Mm-hmm. This is a great song.
Laura's going to break out in karaoke. She's already threatened me for Sunday night. It is going down. Rogue 420, be there.
I love it. Thank you for the plug, Laura. I appreciate it. Yeah. So again, I think that those things are important, and I love the work that you're doing, and everything that you say resonates, quite a bit. And I'm excited for the opportunity, hopefully this month, to get down to Oklahoma, and when we do a live stream, we can do it together, and have a good time.
What do you want to do? You want to do it in a cannabis farm, in a processing lab, in a gummy kitchen? Like, where do you want to do it?
That would be great. And
all of them? We can't do them all at one time.
That's like an intriguing question.
We can bounce. We can go. we can do one portion here, one portion there.
Oh my God. It's going to be like 57 shows all clipped together. Right. One question at a time.
Right.
I don't know. I think I might be busy that day.
Thanks. I thought you said you were all in.
Oh, yeah. I'm totally in. You pick a place.
Very cool. Very cool. So, and then also, Laura, it sounds like you guys had a great time last weekend at the Cannabis Expo. And I know I just said completely the wrong name of the event. So Green Grow. Yes. Green Grow.
She was there as well.
Every time I turned around, my phone was going off because you were going live, Laura. So why don't you share about the event?
It was incredible. It was a really indigenous, local Canna family gathering. The patient demographic was not that grand, but it served for incredible B2B connection.
It really
did.
did.
Those industry leaders that stood there really worked well
Resonated.
together,
Resonated.
hung out later.
Chilling with the homies.
They wrote about each other in their diary. It was pretty spectacular.
Amy, you keep talking about this diary. I'm waiting for that thing to be published so I can read
Oh
into
my
it.
God, if it ever
It's
leaks.
going to be. I already know it. I feel it.
Oh, if it leaks.
We may create a whole podcast about Amy's diary.
Woo, man, I tell you.
Write the whole podcast.
I tell you. Woo. I'll let you see it.
Amy says it how it is.
I do. I cut the bullshit.
Awesome. Very cool. And I think that's what I love about this space. And I know you guys see it as well, is that whenever I run across people, it doesn't matter. I think that in part our movement is about freedom, about individual medical freedom. And I think that those things just resonate with a lot of people. And I think overall, we're winning. I read an article the other day that the AARP, which is the senior, more like towards seniors, you guys have heard of AARP before. But
Right.
they actually included in their newsletter a huge piece that was very much supportive of medical cannabis.
Good. I didn't read it.
I didn't either.
I was too busy doing crazy things.
Yeah.
Well, that's okay. That's okay. You did read. I'm perfectly fine with that. And then some other important things that we saw this week. I'm not sure if you guys saw it in the news at all. The medical cannabis bill that got passed for banking. So I'm really excited about that's going
Super
to
stoked about that. I did read that.
Yeah. So allowing our industry to become bankable and all
Yes.
those things that I think are going to be important for this industry as it grows. There's no reason to put the dispensaries at risk with, either holding cash and all that kind of crazy stuff and putting them in harm's way. I think it's the right thing to do for our industry.
No doubt, no question, and it allows a lot of ability to leverage safe banking with partnerships that really, really, really matter and are safe. When you have to do it anyway, you might as well work together and create an ecosystem that's more sustainable. And banking is a required part of that.
Right.
You can't do it without
It's a safety
banking.
issue in it.
Yeah, you can't do it without banking.
I got a picture of a guy today. I wish I could show you. He's so cute too. If he's watching right now, shout out, total hottie. He sent me a picture in the car with a stack of cash. He had a cash phone, but he had to run around with $10,000 in 20s because that's what you have to do sometimes, and that's not safe.
No,
It's not cool. And
No.
so, I stopped doing that a long time ago because it's just not
dangerous.
okay. And anybody still doing it is trying not to.
Yeah. Have you guys ever talked at all about like cryptocurrencies for this industry? Like
Yeah,
Bitcoin and
of course. It's about to happen.
yeah, you guys all over that?
That's the only way it can really happen.
It is happening, yeah.
Really there? Okay, cool. Yeah, I maybe we can save that for another podcast in terms of how cryptocurrencies are helping the cannabis industry.
All right, well, I'm not going to do a lot of research on that. That's not my swim lane.
Not my forte.
Not my swim lane.
Yeah. Well, let's go around the horn real quick. Closing thoughts for our Cannabis Culture podcast. And this has been a lot of fun. Amy, it's been an absolute pleasure and honor to meet you. I look forward to meeting you in person so that way you can bring that diary and I can start reading it.
Deal.
Yep. Laura, let's go with you first.
Okay,
Closing
so
thoughts.
you start with
Yeah, we're having just a slight bandwidth issue right now, so there's a little bit of lag. So I think I may have lost you guys. Maybe it'll come back here in a second. If it doesn't come back, I'll go ahead and close it out. Yeah, I think they lost internet connection. So I'm going to go ahead and close this Cannabis Culture podcast out. Oh, they're coming back maybe. Yeah, they just don't have the bandwidth to carry. So this is Carlos CJ here with the Cannabis Culture podcast with Laura with the Cannabis Oklahoma Magazine, Laura Madison, and also our
CannabisOklahomaMagazine.com.
yes, and our special guest Amy, and their stream is back. Yay!
Hey, Oklahoma Canna Connect.
Yes, awesome. And then I'll put, if you say, hey, Laura, send me the link so that way I can put that in the description of our podcast. How's that?
Yes, we'll get it done.
Okay.
Yes.
This has been a lot of fun.
hear
And Amy, I'm going to count on you being a guest again soon.
I would look forward to it, sir. Have a wonderful day, and thank
Okay.
you for the time.
All right. Take care,
Bye.
guys. All right. Have fun. Bye-bye.
Bye.